People often believe that kindness is the fastest path to respect. From childhood, we are taught that if we are generous, patient, forgiving, and always willing to help others, people will naturally admire us. It is a comforting belief, but human nature often tells a different story. One of the biggest reasons your kindness makes people disrespect you is because kindness without boundaries is frequently mistaken for weakness. Your kindness is not the real problem. The problem begins when people realize there is no limit to what they can ask from you, no consequence for crossing your boundaries, and no moment when you will choose yourself over pleasing them. Robert Greene teaches that people constantly study one another, often without realizing it. Every interaction silently communicates your standards, your confidence, and your sense of self-worth. You may believe people only notice your kindness, but they are also noticing something else. They are asking themselves, how much can this person tolerate? How much can I ask? How many times can I disappoint them before they finally say no? If your answer is always yes, your kindness slowly stops looking like generosity and starts looking like permission. That is why your kindness makes people disrespect you, not because kindness lacks value, but because unlimited kindness teaches people that your limits do not exist. Think about someone who never refuses a request. Whenever a friend needs help, they immediately agree. Whenever a coworker wants to avoid responsibility, they volunteer. Whenever a family member demands more of their time, they quietly sacrifice their own plans. At first, everyone praises this person. They are described as caring, dependable, and generous. But something slowly changes. Appreciation fades, and expectation takes its place. People no longer ask with gratitude because they assume the answer will always be yes. The moment kindness becomes predictable, many people stop respecting the sacrifice behind it. This is exactly why your kindness makes people disrespect you. What was once appreciated becomes taken for granted. Human nature quickly adapts to whatever becomes normal. If someone receives unlimited access to your time, your attention, and your emotional support, they stop viewing these things as valuable. They begin treating them like permanent resources that exist for their convenience. That is why people often respect what has limits more than what is endlessly available. Scarcity creates appreciation. Boundaries create value. But when your kindness has no boundaries, many people unconsciously stop seeing it as a gift and begin seeing it as an obligation you owe them. This is where many kind people make a painful mistake. They believe that saying no makes them selfish. They fear disappointing others because they confuse kindness with constant self-sacrifice. As a result, they continue giving long after they are emotionally exhausted. They remain silent when someone disrespects them. They forgive the same behavior repeatedly without seeing real change. They accept one-sided relationships because they hope their patience will eventually inspire appreciation. Unfortunately, human nature often rewards confidence before it rewards endless accommodation. Instead of respecting someone who never protects themselves, many people simply continue asking for more. Robert Greene often reminds us that power begins with how you value yourself. If you constantly communicate that everyone else's needs are more important than your own, people naturally begin believing it. This is why your kindness makes people disrespect you. Every time you ignore your own boundaries to avoid conflict, you silently teach others that your comfort comes second. Every time you tolerate repeated disrespect in the name of being nice, you encourage that disrespect to continue. Most people do not consciously decide to exploit kindness. They simply respond to the standards you consistently demonstrate. Imagine two people who are equally kind. The first person agrees to everything, apologizes even when they have done nothing wrong, and never challenges unfair behavior. The second person is equally respectful and generous, but calmly says no when necessary, refuses disrespect, and protects their time without guilt. Which person do you believe will receive greater respect over time? In most cases, it is the second. Not because they are less kind, but because their kindness is supported by self-respect. Their generosity is a choice rather than an obligation, and people instinctively recognize the difference. This does not mean you should become cold, distant, or selfish. That would only replace one unhealthy extreme with another. The goal is not to stop being kind. The goal is to make your kindness intentional instead of automatic. Help because you genuinely choose to help, not because you fear rejection. Forgive when someone has earned another chance, not because you are afraid of losing the relationship. Give from a position of strength, not from a fear that people will stop liking you if you protect your own needs. True kindness never requires the destruction of your dignity. The strongest people understand a simple truth that many never learn. Respect and kindness are not opposites. They work best together. Kindness without strength often invites disrespect. Strength without kindness creates fear instead of trust. But when kindness is balanced with clear boundaries, quiet confidence, and unwavering self-respect, people begin treating you differently. They appreciate your generosity because they understand it is not guaranteed. They value your time because they know it cannot be taken for granted. Most importantly, they respect you because you have already learned to respect yourself. The truth is that your kindness is one of your greatest strengths, but only when it is protected by healthy boundaries. The moment you stop believing that being kind means saying yes to everything, you stop teaching people to underestimate you. Instead, you teach them that your generosity has value, your time has worth, and your respect must be earned, not assumed. And once you understand why kindness without boundaries invites disrespect, the next lesson reveals why being constantly available quietly lowers your value and changes the way people begin to treat you. Once you understand that kindness without boundaries often leads to disrespect, the next reason becomes impossible to ignore. Your kindness makes people disrespect you when you are constantly available. At first, always being there for others seems like a noble quality. You answer every call, reply to every message immediately, cancel your own plans to help someone else, and make yourself available whenever anyone needs you. You believe this level of generosity will strengthen your relationships, but human nature often responds in the opposite way. The more available you become, the less valuable your time appears. What was once appreciated slowly becomes expected, and that expectation quietly replaces respect. Robert Greene teaches that people naturally value what is scarce. This principle applies to money, opportunities, influence, and even human attention. When something is always available, the mind unconsciously assigns it less value. The same pattern appears in relationships. If people know they can always reach you, always depend on you, and always receive your time regardless of how they treat you, they gradually stop appreciating the sacrifice behind your kindness. This is one of the hidden reasons your kindness makes people disrespect you. It is not because helping others is wrong. It is because unlimited availability removes the sense that your time has value. Think about the people you admire most. They are often generous and respectful, but they are not available to everyone at every moment. Their time is protected because they understand it is one of their greatest assets. They help when they choose to help, not because they feel guilty saying no. This balance creates respect. People recognize that spending time with them is a privilege rather than something that can be demanded whenever convenient. Their kindness feels meaningful because it is intentional, not automatic. Now compare that to someone who never protects their schedule. They answer work calls late at night, even when it is unnecessary. They immediately interrupt their own priorities whenever someone asks for a favor. They become the person everyone depends on because they never refuse a request. At first, they are praised for their reliability. But over time, something changes. Instead of hearing "thank you," they begin hearing, "I knew you'd do it." Those few words reveal a powerful psychological shift. Gratitude has disappeared because people no longer see the effort behind the kindness. They simply expect it. This is exactly how constant availability turns kindness into something people stop respecting. Human nature quickly adjusts to patterns. If you repeatedly show people that your plans can always wait while theirs cannot, they begin believing your priorities are less important than their own. They may never say these words out loud, but their behavior reflects this belief. They interrupt your time without asking. They expect immediate responses. They become frustrated when you are finally unavailable. Ironically, the very kindness you hoped would create appreciation begins creating entitlement instead. This is why your kindness makes people disrespect you. Unlimited access teaches people to take your presence for granted. Many kind-hearted people fall into this trap because they fear disappointing others. They worry that saying no will make them appear selfish, uncaring, or difficult. As a result, they continue saying yes even when they are exhausted, overwhelmed, or emotionally drained. They convince themselves that sacrificing their own well-being is the price of being a good person. But Robert Greene reminds us that people often respect those who respect themselves first. When you constantly ignore your own needs, you silently communicate that your time is less valuable than everyone else's. Most people will unconsciously accept the standard you continue to demonstrate. This does not mean you should become unavailable simply to appear important. That would be another form of manipulation. The real lesson is about protecting what has value. Your time is limited, your energy is limited, your attention is limited. Every hour you give to someone else is an hour you cannot invest in your own growth, your family, your health, or your purpose. When you recognize this truth, you begin making different decisions. You stop saying yes out of guilt and start saying yes with intention. Your kindness becomes more meaningful because it comes from genuine choice instead of emotional pressure. Another reason constant availability reduces respect is because it removes mystery and anticipation. Human beings naturally appreciate experiences they cannot access whenever they want. The same principle applies to relationships. When people know they must respect your time to receive it, they value every conversation, every favor, and every opportunity to be around you. But when your attention is permanently available, they begin assuming it will always be there tomorrow. As a result, they stop appreciating it today. The most respected individuals understand that boundaries are not walls designed to push people away. They are filters that protect what matters most. They still help others. They still show compassion. They still offer support during difficult moments. The difference is that they never allow kindness to destroy their own priorities. They know that protecting their time is not selfish, it is responsible. Because they value their own lives, other people naturally begin valuing them as well. The greatest irony is that when you stop being constantly available, genuine relationships often become stronger. People begin planning instead of assuming. They begin expressing gratitude instead of entitlement. They begin respecting your decisions because they realize your kindness is no longer guaranteed by habit. It becomes a gift once again, rather than an expectation. Your generosity regains its value because it is offered freely, not demanded automatically. The truth is that your kindness should never require unlimited access to your life. The moment you protect your time with confidence and without guilt, you stop teaching people to expect everything from you. Instead, you teach them that your attention, your energy, and your presence have value, and people naturally respect what they know they cannot endlessly consume. And once you understand why constant availability quietly lowers your value, the next lesson reveals how people begin testing your boundaries and why the way you respond determines whether your kindness earns respect or invites even greater disrespect. Once you understand that kindness without boundaries and constant availability can slowly reduce the respect people have for you, the next lesson becomes even more important. Your kindness makes people disrespect you when you allow them to test your boundaries without consequences. Most people never begin with open disrespect. They begin with something much smaller. A joke that crosses the line. A promise they repeatedly break. A favor they expect but never return. A comment that quietly undermines your confidence. These moments may seem insignificant on their own, but they are often silent tests. Human nature is curious. People naturally observe what you will accept, what you will ignore, and where your limits truly exist. If every test is met with silence, they assume there are no real boundaries to respect. Robert Greene explains that power is rarely taken all at once. It is surrendered gradually through small compromises. The same principle applies to respect. Very few people suddenly decide to treat someone poorly. Instead, They slowly increase their demands and reduce their consideration, watching your response each step of the way. If you continue smiling, apologizing, and excusing behavior that clearly violates your values, they unconsciously receive permission to continue. This is why your kindness makes people disrespect you. It is not your compassion that causes the problem. It is the absence of consequences that teaches others your kindness can be taken advantage of without cost. Imagine a friendship where one person is always the first to apologize, even when they are not responsible for the conflict. At first, this seems like maturity. They believe they are protecting the relationship by avoiding arguments. But after enough time, something changes. The other person begins expecting the apology. They stop taking responsibility because they know someone else will repair every problem. The kind person believes they are keeping the peace, but in reality, they are teaching the other person that accountability is optional. Every unchallenged act of disrespect quietly weakens the foundation of mutual respect. This pattern appears in every area of life. At work, the employee who never objects to unfair responsibilities often receives even more work while others are overlooked. In families, the person who constantly sacrifices their own needs becomes the one everyone depends on without asking how they feel. In friendships, the individual who never speaks up about disrespect slowly becomes the easiest person to ignore. None of these situations happen overnight. They develop through repeated moments where kindness replaces healthy boundaries. The problem is not generosity. The problem is believing that protecting yourself is somehow incompatible with being a good person. One of the greatest misunderstandings about kindness is the belief that confronting disrespect is unkind. Many people stay silent because they fear conflict. They worry that expressing disappointment will make them appear difficult or insensitive. But silence often creates a much greater problem. When disrespect goes unchallenged, people rarely interpret your silence as patience. More often, they interpret it as permission. Human nature follows patterns. If a behavior produces no consequence, it usually continues. This is exactly why your kindness makes people disrespect you when it is disconnected from self-respect. Robert Greene reminds us that people instinctively measure confidence by observing behavior rather than listening to words. You can tell someone you deserve respect, but your actions reveal whether you truly believe it. If you tolerate repeated disrespect while claiming to value yourself, people notice the contradiction. On the other hand, when you calmly address unacceptable behavior without anger or drama, you communicate something powerful. You show that your kindness has limits and that your self-respect is not negotiable. That quiet confidence often earns far more respect than endless patience ever could. There is a significant difference between reacting emotionally and responding with strength. Emotionally reactive people often explode after remaining silent for too long. They tolerate 10 acts of disrespect and then suddenly become overwhelmed. This usually surprises everyone because no boundaries were communicated earlier. Emotionally strong people behave differently. They address problems early, calmly, and directly. They do not insult others or seek revenge. They simply make it clear what they will and will not accept. Their kindness remains intact, but it is supported by clarity instead of fear. Another reason people test boundaries is because they want to understand your standards. This does not always come from bad intentions. Sometimes people simply behave according to whatever standards they encounter. If you consistently accept last-minute cancellations, broken promises, or disrespectful jokes, they assume these behaviors are acceptable within the relationship. But the moment you respectfully communicate that these actions are not acceptable, the relationship changes. Those who genuinely value you will adjust their behavior. Those who only valued your unlimited tolerance will often disappear. Although this may feel painful, it reveals an important truth. You are not losing people who respected you. You are losing people who benefited from the absence of your boundaries. This is why healthy boundaries are one of the greatest forms of kindness, not only toward yourself, but also toward others. Boundaries create honesty. They eliminate confusion. They allow relationships to be built on mutual respect rather than silent resentment. When people know where your limits are, They no longer have to guess what behavior is acceptable. Genuine relationships become stronger because they are built on trust instead of emotional sacrifice. The strongest individuals understand that kindness and firmness can exist together. They can forgive without becoming foolish. They can be compassionate without becoming available for exploitation. They can remain respectful while refusing to tolerate disrespect. This balance is what transforms kindness from a weakness into a source of quiet power. It sends a clear message that your generosity is real, but it will never come at the expense of your dignity. The truth is that people rarely stop testing your boundaries on their own. They stop when they realize your kindness is supported by self-respect, confidence, and the courage to protect your standards. The moment your actions consistently reflect those qualities, people begin thinking twice before taking your generosity for granted. And once you understand why people constantly test your boundaries, the next lesson reveals how seeking approval through kindness quietly gives others the power to manipulate your emotions and diminish your value. Once you understand that people test your boundaries before they decide how much respect to give you, another hidden truth begins to emerge. Your kindness makes people disrespect you when it is driven by the need for approval instead of genuine strength. There is a profound difference between being kind because it reflects your character and being kind because you are afraid of being disliked. On the surface, these two behaviors may appear identical. Both people smile, both offer help, and both avoid unnecessary conflict. But human nature is remarkably sensitive to intention. People can often sense when your kindness comes from confidence and when it comes from the fear of rejection. And when kindness becomes a strategy to gain acceptance, it quietly weakens your position in every relationship. Robert Greene often emphasizes that those who desperately seek approval unknowingly surrender their power. The moment your happiness depends on whether other people like you, you hand them control over your emotions. Without realizing it, every decision begins revolving around one question: will this make them happy? Instead of acting according to your values, you begin acting according to their expectations. This is why your kindness makes people disrespect you. It is no longer an expression of generosity. It becomes a request for validation. People stop seeing your kindness as strength and start recognizing your dependence on their approval. Think about someone who constantly agrees with everyone around them. They never express disagreement, even when they know something is wrong. They laugh at jokes they do not find funny, apologize for mistakes they never made, and say yes to requests they secretly want to refuse. They believe this behavior will make them more likable. For a short time, it might. But over time, people begin noticing something else. They realize this person rarely stands up for themselves. They recognize that guilt can easily influence their decisions. Gradually, respect begins to disappear because approval-seeking behavior often signals insecurity rather than confidence. Human nature naturally respects people who are comfortable with disagreement. This does not mean being argumentative or difficult. It means having the courage to remain true to your principles, even when someone else disapproves. The individual who calmly says, "I can't do that," without anger or guilt, often earns more respect than the person who says yes while quietly resenting the decision. Why? Because confidence communicates value. It tells others that your decisions are guided by principles rather than fear. This is something approval-seeking kindness can never accomplish. Many people develop this habit early in life. They discover that being agreeable earns praise, avoids criticism, and reduces conflict. Over the years, they begin connecting their worth with other people's happiness. If everyone around them is pleased, they feel successful. If someone becomes disappointed, they immediately blame themselves. Eventually, kindness becomes less about helping others and more about avoiding rejection. The tragedy is that the more desperately they seek acceptance, the less genuine respect they often receive. Robert Greene reminds us that people instinctively admire those who possess inner certainty. Individuals who know their values do not need constant reassurance from others. They are willing to disappoint people when necessary, because they understand that protecting their integrity is more important than protecting every opinion someone may have about them. This quiet confidence creates influence. It sends a message that kindness is their choice, not their weakness. But when every act of kindness is motivated by the hope of being liked, people unconsciously recognize the imbalance. They begin expecting your generosity because they know your fear of rejection will prevent you from refusing. This is exactly how manipulation quietly begins. It rarely starts with dramatic control or obvious abuse. It often begins with emotional pressure. Someone says, if you really cared about me, you would do this. Another reminds you of everything they have done for you to create guilt. Someone else becomes upset simply because you finally chose your own priorities. If your kindness depends on keeping everyone happy, these tactics become incredibly effective. You sacrifice your peace to avoid disappointing them, while they learn that your emotions can be controlled through guilt alone. This is another reason your kindness makes people disrespect you. Approval-seeking behavior teaches others that your boundaries disappear whenever enough emotional pressure is applied. The strongest people understand a simple but powerful truth. You are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. You can be compassionate without carrying burdens that do not belong to you. You can help others without sacrificing your own mental peace. You can disappoint someone without becoming a bad person. These ideas may feel uncomfortable at first, especially for people who have spent years measuring their worth through approval. But genuine confidence begins the moment you accept that not everyone will understand your decisions, and that is perfectly acceptable. This does not mean becoming cold or indifferent to the feelings of others. Real kindness still considers how actions affect people. The difference is that emotionally healthy kindness does not abandon self-respect. It speaks honestly instead of pretending. It says no when necessary instead of saying yes out of fear. It values truth over temporary comfort. Ironically, this form of kindness often creates healthier and more balanced relationships because it is built on honesty instead of silent resentment. There is another reason approval-seeking destroys respect. People naturally trust consistency. When your personality changes depending on who you are trying to impress, others begin questioning your authenticity. They wonder which version of you is real. But when your kindness comes from deeply held values rather than the desire to be accepted, you remain consistent regardless of who is watching. That consistency becomes a source of credibility. It tells people that your character is genuine, not something you perform to receive praise. The truth is that kindness should never become a negotiation for love, acceptance, or approval. The moment you stop trying to earn your worth through endless generosity, your relationships begin changing. Those who only valued your willingness to please will often pull away, while those who genuinely respect you will appreciate your honesty even more. Your kindness becomes stronger because it is no longer controlled by fear. It becomes an expression of confidence, integrity, and self-respect. And once you stop seeking approval through kindness, the next lesson reveals why quiet strength always earns more respect than endless niceness, and how balancing compassion with confidence transforms the way people treat you. Once you stop seeking approval through kindness, you begin discovering one of the most powerful truths about human nature. Your kindness makes people disrespect you only when it exists without strength. Real respect is not created by endless niceness. It is created when kindness is balanced with confidence, emotional control, and unwavering self-respect. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They believe that being nice and being kind are the same thing. In reality, they are completely different. Niceness often comes from the desire to avoid conflict, while genuine kindness comes from inner strength. A nice person may remain silent because they fear rejection. A kind person speaks the truth respectfully because they value honesty more than temporary approval. Robert Greene often explains that the people who command the greatest respect are rarely the loudest or the most aggressive. They possess something much more powerful, quiet strength. They do not need to prove themselves through anger, arguments, or endless explanations. Their confidence is visible in the way they carry themselves, the way they protect their boundaries, and the calm way they respond under pressure. This quiet strength changes how people interact with them. Others naturally think twice before crossing their limits because they understand that kindness does not mean weakness. This is exactly why your kindness makes people disrespect you when strength is missing. Without confidence behind it, kindness becomes easy to overlook. Think about two different individuals. The first person constantly agrees with everyone around them. They avoid every disagreement, apologize even when they are not responsible, and tolerate behavior that clearly violates their values. The second person is equally respectful and compassionate, but they refuse to compromise their dignity. They listen carefully, speak calmly, and help whenever possible, yet they never allow kindness to become an invitation for exploitation. Which person naturally earns more respect? The answer is almost always the second. Not because they are less caring, but because their kindness is supported by strength. People instinctively recognize the difference between generosity that comes from confidence and generosity that comes from fear. Human nature is drawn toward emotional stability. Someone who remains calm during conflict sends a powerful message without raising their voice. They show that their emotions are under control and that their decisions are guided by principles rather than pressure. This kind of strength cannot be manipulated easily. When others attempt to provoke them with guilt, criticism, or emotional games, they respond with patience instead of panic. They neither become cruel nor surrender their boundaries. This balance creates deep respect because it demonstrates mastery over oneself before attempting to influence anyone else. Many people mistakenly believe that showing strength requires becoming cold or intimidating. They assume kindness and power cannot exist together. But history repeatedly shows the opposite. The strongest leaders, mentors, and influential individuals often possess deep compassion, yet they are equally capable of making difficult decisions. They understand that protecting standards sometimes requires disappointing people. They know that saying no does not erase kindness. Instead, it preserves its value. When people realize your kindness is a conscious choice rather than a permanent obligation, they begin appreciating it instead of expecting it. Another reason quiet strength earns respect is because it removes emotional desperation from relationships. People who constantly seek to please others often reveal anxiety through their actions. They rush to solve every problem, over-explain every decision, and worry endlessly about how others perceive them. Quietly confident people behave differently. They trust their values enough to let their actions speak. They do not chase validation because they have already found it within themselves. Ironically, this emotional independence often attracts more genuine respect than years of trying to impress everyone around them. Robert Greene teaches that power begins with self-mastery. Before you can influence how others treat you, you must first control how you respond to them. If every criticism immediately changes your mood, every rejection destroys your confidence, or every disagreement causes panic, people quickly recognize where your emotional weaknesses exist. But when you remain composed under pressure, they realize your behavior cannot be controlled so easily. This quiet emotional discipline becomes part of your presence. It communicates confidence without requiring a single boastful word. Strength also means knowing when to walk away. One of the greatest reasons your kindness makes people disrespect you is because you sometimes stay where your kindness is repeatedly ignored. You continue giving to relationships that only take. You continue explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. You continue forgiving behavior that never changes. Quiet strength teaches a different lesson. It understands that not every relationship deserves endless chances. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is leaving peacefully instead of fighting endlessly for appreciation that was never genuine. This does not mean giving up on people after every mistake. Genuine kindness always leaves room for forgiveness, understanding, and growth. The difference is that forgiveness no longer replaces wisdom. You forgive without forgetting your standards. You remain compassionate without abandoning your dignity. You help others without allowing them to repeatedly misuse your generosity. This balance protects both your character and your peace of mind. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about quiet strength is that it rarely needs to announce itself. It is visible in consistent actions rather than impressive speeches. It appears in the calm confidence to say no without guilt, to accept disagreement without fear, and to walk away without seeking revenge. People naturally respect those who remain true to themselves because authenticity is difficult to fake. While endless niceness often invites higher expectations, quiet strength inspires genuine admiration. The truth is that kindness reaches its highest value only when it stands beside confidence, discipline, and self-respect. The moment you stop believing that being nice is enough, you begin becoming someone whose kindness cannot be mistaken for weakness. Instead of giving from fear, you give from strength. Instead of seeking approval, you remain loyal to your values. And instead of chasing respect, you quietly become the kind of person who naturally earns it. And once you understand why quiet strength earns more respect than endless niceness, the final lesson reveals how respecting yourself first transforms every relationship and teaches others exactly how they should treat you. As you have seen throughout this journey, the problem has never been kindness itself. Kindness is one of the greatest qualities a person can possess. The real problem begins when kindness exists without self-respect, without boundaries, and without the confidence to protect your own worth. That is why your kindness makes people disrespect you. It is not because compassion is weak. It is because people often take for granted what you fail to value yourself. This leads to the most important lesson of all. The way you respect yourself teaches other people how they should respect you. Before the world decides your value, your own actions have already made that decision. Robert Greene often reminds us that human beings are constantly observing one another. They pay attention to far more than the words you speak. They notice what you tolerate, what you defend, what you ignore, and what you repeatedly allow. Every action quietly communicates your standards. If you constantly sacrifice your peace to keep everyone else comfortable, people begin believing your comfort is not important. If you repeatedly forgive behavior that never changes, they assume your forgiveness has no limits. If you continue giving your time to those who never appreciate it, they stop seeing your generosity as a gift. This is exactly why your kindness makes people disrespect you. Your behavior silently teaches people what they can expect from you. Many people spend years trying to convince others to value them while neglecting the one person whose opinion matters most, themselves. They hope that if they become more generous, more patient, or more available, respect will finally appear. But respect rarely begins from the outside. It begins within. When you genuinely value your own time, your own peace, and your own dignity, your decisions naturally begin reflecting that belief. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. You stop explaining every decision simply to avoid criticism. You stop chasing relationships that require endless sacrifice, but offer very little in return. These changes may seem small, but they transform the way people respond to you. Imagine someone who calmly refuses a request because it conflicts with an important commitment. They do not become angry. They do not insult anyone. They simply protect their priorities without guilt. Compare that to someone who immediately abandons their own plans every time another person makes a demand. Which individual appears to value themselves more? Human nature answers this question almost instantly. People naturally respect those who demonstrate that their lives have structure, purpose, and standards. They recognize that kindness is available, but it cannot be demanded at the expense of self-respect. Robert Greene teaches that power grows from consistency. If your words claim confidence while your actions communicate insecurity, people will always believe your actions. You can say, "I deserve respect." But if you repeatedly accept disrespectful behavior, others notice the contradiction. On the other hand, when your actions consistently reflect confidence, honesty, and healthy boundaries, people begin adjusting their own behavior. They understand that certain lines cannot be crossed because you have already made your standards clear. This is one of the greatest reasons self-respect changes relationships. It removes uncertainty. It teaches others exactly how you expect to be treated without needing endless arguments or emotional confrontations. Another important truth is that respecting yourself often requires accepting temporary discomfort. There will be moments when people become disappointed because you finally say no. Some may accuse you of changing. Others may claim you have become selfish simply because you stopped allowing them to benefit from your unlimited kindness. This reaction can feel painful, especially if you have spent years trying to please everyone. But remember this: people who only valued your ability to sacrifice yourself were never respecting you in the first place. They were respecting the convenience you provided. Genuine relationships survive healthy boundaries because they are built on mutual respect instead of emotional dependence. This is where true confidence begins. Confidence is not speaking louder than everyone else. It is not proving your worth through constant achievement or seeking approval through endless generosity. Real confidence is quietly believing that your time matters, your emotions matter, your dreams matter, and your dignity matters. Once this belief becomes part of your identity, your behavior naturally changes. You stop chasing acceptance because you no longer need permission to value yourself. Ironically, this is often the moment when other people begin respecting you more than ever before. There is another powerful lesson hidden here. Self-respect does not make you less kind. It actually makes your kindness more genuine. When you help someone because you truly choose to, your generosity carries authenticity. It is free from resentment because it is not forced. You no longer give out of guilt or fear of rejection. You give because compassion reflects your character, not because you are trying to earn love or approval. This transforms every relationship in your life. The people who remain begin appreciating your kindness because they know it comes from strength rather than obligation. The strongest people understand that balance is everything. They are compassionate without becoming naive. They forgive without abandoning wisdom. They remain generous without allowing exploitation. They protect their peace without becoming cold. This balance is what separates respected kindness from misunderstood kindness. It allows you to remain true to your values while refusing to become someone else's emotional resource without limits. In the end, kindness supported by self-respect becomes one of the most powerful forms of influence because it inspires admiration instead of entitlement. The truth is that your kindness should never require you to lose yourself. The moment you respect your own boundaries, value your own time, and remain loyal to your own principles, you begin teaching the world a different lesson. Instead of showing people that your generosity can be endlessly consumed, you show them that your kindness is a gift offered by choice. And people almost always value what they know cannot be taken for granted. Always remember this: kindness is never your weakness. Abandoning your self-respect is. The moment you protect both, you stop inviting disrespect and start becoming the kind of person whose compassion is admired because it is strengthened by confidence, wisdom, and unwavering self-worth.